Hi, everybody. It's Joey. I just wanted to take a moment to briefly explain that the audio levels on this particular interview are a little off. I had my microphone too far away from my face, and so my voice goes in and out at different times. I apologize. I have made a note of that, and I will do better next time. But for this particular interview, I did have to adjust the levels to capture as much of what I'm saying as possible without frying out the audio. So again, I apologize, but I have learned my lesson. I think the interview still comes through nicely, and you'll get a lot out of that. I really enjoy talking with my friend Darin about building community, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Howdy.
Howdy. All right, let's get started.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Get Behind Me, Jesus. I am your host, Joe Cash, and we are with my friend Darin Gemmer today. We're going to be talking about community, among other things. Darin, thanks for being here. And would you just introduce yourself to everyone and, tell us what kind of things you work on?
Thanks. Good to see you, Joey. My name is Darin. I am I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I live just outside of Seattle with my wife and my 2 teenage kids, and my in-laws live with us as well, actually. So we've got a multi-generational home. My wife is a Presbyterian PCUSA pastor. We've been married 22 years yesterday.
Yeah, so, congratulations, by the way.
It's been good.
That's exciting stuff.
Professionally, I am currently a general contractor, but I am in training, almost done, and ready to be a career and technical education teacher in the middle school or high school. And we'll be looking for a job in the fall. Before I was a contractor, I used to run summer camps. That was my main thing. Christian summer camps here in Kitsap County, Washington. Most recently as the director of Camp Indianola, which is where you and I met. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun with that.
No, that's all right. Well, that's how we met at camp. So we've known each other for, it's been almost 6 years. Right at 6 years.
October of 2018. So almost 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that is wild.
Yeah. Did I hit everything on the intro?
Yeah, I think so. That's good. So you're studying to be a teacher right now, and what is it that drew you to that?
Man, I mean, I've been working with kids in volunteer and professional capacities since I was 15, I think. I started coaching my first youth sports team when I was still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And volunteer youth leader, the summer camps, had a stint working for Youth for Christ. So I've always been working with kids. Recently, I just see such a need in the public school system for more of a diversity of educators, and particularly for men to get into education and to provide an additional style of role model for youth. I connect really well with kids. I always kind of have, and I've really enjoyed even just a little bit of student teaching I've done as part of my program was really fun. Even the pain in the butt kids are, they're a bit of a challenge, but they're still just genuinely wonderful people at heart. They're just sometimes a little confused. So I'm looking forward to kind of being a part of helping them navigate a really challenging part of life and maybe getting a little bit less confused. So
Right.
Yeah. And then career and technical education just happens to be what I'm currently qualified to teach as a general contractor and business owner. So that was the quickest route into the classroom. It's not necessarily the passion of what I'd like to be teaching, though I really did love my woodshop time when I was in high school and would love to teach something like woodshop again if that was something that was available eventually.
Right. Right. There's a lot of touch points there. I love that you're doing that because there's continuity between what you've been doing, for all these years. I know we've talked about camp and whether or not that's an option in the future or something again, but I think playing to your strengths and also leaning into your passion and being there for youth is a continuity that's very inspiring. So
thanks.
I'm glad you're doing that.
Me too. It's been fun already. I'm looking forward to continuing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about let's rewind a little bit and talk about what got you here. I'm curious about your deconstruction story, if you would call it a deconstruction story, or, how you've worked through your faith and things like that. And then how that played into the different roles that you've already identified.
I know there's mixed reactions to the term deconstruction, but for me, it has been a good descriptor of what I've experienced, maybe not in the Daridian sense that most philosophers would cringe a little bit, but in the more like current ex-evangelical sense. My wife, Deanna, and I often say that we're OG deconstructors because we deconstructed before 2015, right? And 2015
was cool.
Man, that's when we were just the first rats off a sinking ship. So it has been interesting because we did the work before a lot of our peers did. And so when 2015 rolled around, we were kind of ready to receive them. I'm probably jumping ahead, so let me back up a little. I didn't grow up Christian. My parents both were raised in Christian households, but had since not had faith be part of their lives. So, that was just kind of it. My parents were divorced, and I was grasping at straws, trying to figure out how to figure out who I was in the midst of a really challenging, time. I'm the oldest of 5. My parents got divorced when I was 8, and my youngest sister was a newborn. So I kind of stepped in as a pseudo dad in a lot of ways. This is a constant point of conversation in therapy lately. All that to say, faith wasn't a big part of my life, but I was looking for belonging and acceptance. I was kind of a geek back when the anti-bullying stuff that's part of schools now was not nearly as robust. So I had few friends. I did not really enjoy my life in middle school and high school and felt very much on the outside other than my couple of friends who I was always a little bit convinced maybe didn't like me as much as I liked them. That hasn't been helped by the fact that I have tried to reconnect with my high school best friend since then, and this should probably get edited out. And I found him. I found his mom, and I've reached out multiple times and said, hey, will you get him in touch with me? And he has no interest, apparently, because he has not reached out. Which is a little bit sad.
Still on Facebook. I tried a couple of times to get in touch with a few people from my past, let them know that I was not the same person and that I would love to reconnect, but nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is we're very different people. Life is very different. Like, it's kind of fun to go down the nostalgia road, but beyond that, without, what we'll probably get to later, without like a more solid touch point for who we are now and what we're about now, it's not as interesting to maintain that connection,
Right.
So in high school, I was captain of the chess team because I was the only member of the chess team who had a car, and the captain of the chess team got a parking place in the upper parking lot. So that's how I became the captain of the chess team. I went to state in chess, so
awesome.
Super geek. But when I was a sophomore, my aunt was sending my cousins to camp at Warm Beach, which is up in Stanwood, a little bit north of where we live now, really close to where I grew up.
This is a Christian camp?
Yeah, Free Methodist Associated. It was owned by the Free Methodist camp or the Free Methodist Church before it made more sense for taxes for them to be their own, essentially. Big camp. It's one of the bigger ones in the state. And It was just a weekend retreat that my cousins were going to. And she said, hey, do you want to go with them? My cousins all live in central Washington, but they went to a Free Methodist church, and this is where the Free Methodists all went, right? So they were driving across the state, picked me up on the way by, and I went to camp, and like this group of kids who didn't know me, other than my two cousins that were part of the group, just like welcomed me in. My cousins are both women. Girls at the time, right? And so I wasn't like in a cabin even with my own cousins. I was in a cabin with a bunch of guys I did not know who probably all had crushes on my cousins. You know, like that's the situation I came into. But they just welcomed me in, and that acceptance was really novel and really appealing. So when the not quite altar call came around on Sunday morning, that was the day. So that was November 19th, 1996.
Born again birthday.
My born again birthday. Exactly a month after my actual birthday of that year. So yeah. And I fell hard, man. I went super zealous. Mm-hmm. I was looking for something that was going to kind of give me identity. And so, yeah.
Your life was kind of chaotic. You were assuming adult responsibilities in your scenario. And so I imagine you didn't have a lot of time to think about bigger stuff. It was mostly just, you know, what needed to happen right then and there, survival mode kind of thing. So what did this experience sort of open up?
Yeah. I think it was the first time that I felt like I was part of something bigger, like this invitation into this family of God, right? And that had been so like clearly modeled for me by these random teenagers that I didn't know. You know, it was kind of like that was the microcosm, and then this invitation was into this bigger version of that. I was like, man, I mean, my family is a shit show. This family seems like it's got its stuff together. Let's go there. Can we swear on this one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I think that belonging, that acceptance, that's what I always come back to in terms of like, what was it about that was so appealing? You know, there's something too about like camp retreats they're just fun, you know, and the music is usually pretty solid. At least it was in my experience at most of those camps that I was at. And like, I know the mechanisms that get used to make a decision more appealing. Now, at 16, I didn't know that, right?
Well, there's something about being together in that place, in that circumstance, that is the baseline. Like, if nobody did anything, there's still something special about being out on your own with other people who are, you know, whether they're similar or not, being there for like the same reason, being out in the wilderness or out in a remote place where you can experience different things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily experience like that. It drops your guard and it puts you in a contemplative place, I think. This is something that made a huge impact for me was, you know, our mission to help to create sacred space. And I think camps sort of innately have that because they're out in creation. You know, they're out in the wilderness where you can experience these incredible things. They might be mundane things, but they can be incredible things.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like any tool, it can be used for good and it can be used for not as good or...
Right. Right. You crank that dial. You start with that as your baseline, and then you crank that dial up with all the different things that you can do.
Yep. Yeah.
And really ratchet up that experience and get people in a place where they're ready to commit to something.
Yep. I did 20 summers at summer camp between being a summer staffer and just never as a camper. Oddly, I never went to summer camp as a camper. I went to this one retreat, and I went to one my senior year of high school, again at Warm Beach. Neither of them were summer camps, and yet, so.
Family probably couldn't afford to have you gone. You were taking on so much responsibility.
100%. So yeah, I guess that started me down kind of that zealous Christian road. Like I was in it. There's still some things from like my high school zealous days that I really regret that I look back on now and like, oh, that was immature, high schooler trying to figure stuff out. You know, same thing as I was talking about earlier, right? Just like sorting things out. But I leaned in hard and started to feel like I wanted to go, you know, into youth ministry of some sort, kind of simultaneous to this camp experience. I like just happened to have started going to this youth group and kind of starting to make friends and feel belonging there too. So between those two, I really just started to lean hard into it. And so I was on kind of the youth pastor summer camp track. I even got my, you know, eventually when I figured stuff out after I got married and things like that, I went and got a degree in recreation so that I could be a professional in summer camp. And that eventually led us to Kitsap County, where we live now, for my first full-time summer camp job as a program director at another larger Christian camp at the south end of the county. So all this while, you know, Deanna and I are kind of talking about being in this camping ministry together. There were a lot of things that we really liked about being a couple in camping ministry. She was really involved, even though she was never. One summer we did a summer staff, like a summer leadership staff together. I was in charge of discipleship of all the men's staff, and she was just in charge of all the women's staff discipleship. But other than that, and the summer that we met, where we were both camp counselors, she was not on full-time staff at any of the camps that I was on full-time staff. But we still kind of viewed it as a team thing, where she was still really interested in discipling young women, and I would kind of focus on the men back when the gender binary was a bigger deal for us. But we changed that up by the time we got to Indianola after we had deconstructed.
Right. So that was sort of self-motivated, that desire for Deanna to be involved as well. That wasn't like imposed by a denomination or anything like that.
We ran into a few camps where it was an expectation when I was interviewing, but we didn't end up working at either of them. My favorite was one camp director when we were interviewing, and it was pretty clear this wasn't going to work out, but the camp director were having dinner. They had flown us down to California. Like, it was a whole thing. And he turns to Deanna, and you know Deanna, wildly capable, incredibly like wise, just like I've said, every job I've had except my current one as a general contractor, she would have been better at it than me. And so, but you know, they're interviewing me. They turn to her, this camp director who barely knows me, turns to her and says, "So Deanna, how do you picture yourself volunteering in the camp office?" Like, just that such a pigeonholing, like, would you like to lick the stamps? And she was gracious and handled it well. But, you know, she also probably could have dove across the table and, you know, torn out a chunk of hair or something.
Oh, yeah. So, oh, yeah. I hear you're also interested in ministry. Have we got a job for you?
Yeah, kind of ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been doing this together. And the thing that mostly drew us into it was every summer we had this like community of kids, of teens, of college students who would come together around this like shared interest that became a shared mission, but they didn't know that when they started. You know, the returners did, but the new people didn't. And they would come together, and somehow this odd mix of just random people with this one thing that they knew they liked became this really cool community. And it was a lot of work. It was really hard. I always said my favorite day of the year was the first day of staff training, and my second favorite day of the year was the day they all left. I loved them in between, but doggone it, it was exhausting in the middle. And that it was hard work holding that community together in the midst of all of that. Like, that relational work was really, really challenging, but also very rewarding for both Deanna and I.
Camp is a sacred space. You talked about the magic of seeing people come together and become not just a cohesive team, but a community. What do you think is the is the special sauce for that? What are the values that you focused on? I think hospitality is something that we've talked about off and on for a long time. That was obviously a key component of the work that we wanted to do. But was that something that you identified early on as like a value that you wanted to center the growth of that community around?
Yes and no. I don't think I had that language for it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw it happening and I couldn't quite name it.
So how did you partner with what was going on, or how did you jump in to manage that and to try to cultivate that?
Man, I don't know if I've ever thought about like the details. I mean, I know when you and I worked at Indianola together, like you and I had a lot of conversations around it. I'm sure I had a lot of thoughts.
You had a lot more experience. I had some different experience, but I definitely had a passion for camp and a vision, even if it was inaccurate, a vision of what I thought camping could be or ought to be. And so a lot of my fumbling around and trying to figure things out was based on, some framework that included values that I was trying to work toward. I like the word cultivation because I grew up with gardens. My dad planted gardens, and as a kid you don't really catch on, but as an adult, like, it's easy for me to look back and realize that he was really just figuring a lot of stuff out. Like, yeah. We would go out and he would tend the garden, and he put a lot of love and care into it, but I don't think he knew exactly what needed to be done for corn or peppers or things like that. We just sort of learned as we went. And so I wonder if sort of the natural development of the community and you cultivating that sometimes looks in the beginning, or maybe for a long time, looks more like, you just kind of fumbling, trying to snip here, plant here, or water here, and just sort of run around and figure some things out and not really have a plan or a method to the madness.
Yeah, I mean, there were components. I'm thinking like we usually use some high and low ropes challenge elements to kind of build some teamwork and some self-reflection and understanding. We did stuff like that. We did, half of staff training was literally like, let's do the actual labor. And this was true when I was a summer staffer as well. Let's do the actual labor of setting up camp for the summer. Mm-hmm. And just like some of the memories I have from being a summer staffer were literally like, there's this one guy, he and I dug 24 post holes because we were the two biggest guys. And if we're honest, he dug 22 and a half post holes and I dug 1.5. And that was great. His camp name was Diesel, and he earned it. The dude could work. But, like he and I dug 24 post holes together because we had to put these signs up, and there were 12 cabins, and you need 2 posts per cabin, and stuff like that, where like you have to move these mattresses from here to there. It has to get done. Each mattress takes 2 people. You're going to figure out how to like work together and be together, and you're going to talk while you do it. So some of it was just like, putting people in a place where they could make those connections and find their commonalities. Some of it was more intentional or more overt, right? Where like if someone's paying attention, like Darin's trying to build a team, right? And sometimes it was just like, hey, you guys go do something over there. When you come back, I know you're going to be a better team than you were when I sent you. I know that. You don't know. You don't know yet. It's going to be fine. So it always was around finding that shared thing, which I know we're potentially going to talk about a little bit more later, but like that's throughout, right? What's the thing that we're gathering around, and at camp, it was the camp experience. And at Indianola, we kind of had summarized that into the 3 S's, which was stewardship, significance, and sacred space. And we, those were kind of our guiding touchstones to say, like, we're going to steward this space well. And so we drew people who are interested in caring for that incredible property and the place that it was. Right? And, significance, like we were going to do something of import, right? That we weren't just a bunch of weirdos in costumes playing silly games. We were also that, but that was a means to an end, right? And then the sacred space element of recognizing that this space has been instrumental in the development, the spiritual, emotional, mental, physical development of generations of young people, right? Mm-hmm. Recognizing that there's something about that that makes for, it becomes more sacred. There's something there in the ground, right? And I think that was the part that I've heard you speak to. Like, what did you feel that? Like, what was that like as you stepped on? Because I had been there for about 4 years when you joined the team.
Well, I think thinking about all the things that you've just mentioned, hospitality, teamwork, labor or hard work, like those are values, but also components that build a community. And I think the stewardship, the significance, the sacred space, I think all of those things were evident because the components were clear, and the components were something that, like, in conversation with you when we were interviewing for the job, we knew that hospitality was important. We knew that you had high expectations for the amount and the quality of the work that was going to be expected of us. So those components were already a clear part of what we knew we were expecting, and not just from us, but that we could expect from the people that we would be working with, because those are the things that you already outlined for the kind of space that you wanted to create. But honestly, like there's no denying that stepping foot on a place like that in the Cascades, in Washington, the Pacific Northwest, like there's just something about that space that is incredible and sacred. I think it was the culmination of all of those things and how well they worked together. But like just on a visceral level, like scale of 1 to 10, reacting to the place itself, like definitely 10. Yeah. When you brought us there, and we not only had we been looking for a place where we could see ourselves, doing the things that you were talking about, you and Deanna wanting to do, work together and, impact lives together and find a way that we could, play to our strengths individually, but also together. We wanted that. But as soon as we stepped foot on Indianola, it was like, yeah, we could definitely see ourselves here.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think, to be honest, though, I think it is a combination of all of those things. I think that there is a basic framework, even if you can't pinpoint too many specific things, there is a basic framework where those things, and that's why I wrote those down. Teamwork is important. Being able to interact with other people, share commonalities, there's vulnerability there that makes teamwork necessarily a component to the kind of community that we're talking about. And then hard work, like there's just no way around that. Anything that's worthwhile is going to require some level of hard work. You have to work at something to get something of value out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you learn a lot about someone when you're working alongside them in any endeavor, It reminds me of this idea you and I have discussed a few times about centered set versus bounded set communities, right? Where bounded set is the basic idea is like this, here are the boundaries, don't stray outside of these boundaries. And if you do, you're no longer part of our community, right? And I think what you and I experienced and were trying to build with summer staff and even with the full-time staff together, like, was more of a centered set of like, here's the thing that we're all pursuing. Here's the thing that's drawing us together, this one idea this one mission, whatever it was. You know, in this case, sacred space was kind of the three S's, that was the one that most people really like got and were excited about, right? And we're building this sacred space together. We didn't have to say, like, once you're on the camp property, you're on, you know, but if as soon as you leave the camp property, you're no longer a part of this community, right? It was like the camp property was, even though it was incredible, it was kind of incidental to this idea that we were all gathering around, creating a sacred space, co-creating a sacred space.
The camp was instrumental as a microcosm of the larger idea. Like, we wanted people to leave that space and recognize that sacred space was all around them, you know, or that there were opportunities or moments throughout their lives where they could create and experience sacred space. But you have to deliberately step out of your routine and make a decision to slow down and to be committed to a thing in order to carry that through and see that woven into, you know, other aspects of your lives. We created, or we facilitated that moment, that experience for them to be able to stop, slow down, and something different than the norm, but that also became a lure for them, to use open relational language. It became a lure for them to seek and to aspire to in the rest of their lives.
Yeah, it's less about a requirement, more about an invitation, you know, which that's part of where the hospitality was so key as well, right? Like, hospitality is all about invitation. It's all about bringing people in and bringing people together, but via invitation. It's optional. It's a choice that they get to make, you know. And some of the saddest summer staff stories that I have are staff who didn't take us up on that invitation, right? Who came in and just for whatever reason couldn't receive the invitation to join in that endeavor with us. That's true too of the high schoolers, getting back to where we started, right? Some of the kids that have the hardest time are those who are being invited into, like, we're here, we're gonna learn something incredible together. And the kids that just choose not to take you up on that invitation, it's heartbreaking to watch, because you're like, this could be great. This could be great for you. It's going to be great for us with it, whether or not you join. It would be better if you did for us. And it'd be better for you, you know, but you can only invite. You can't force. That's the bounded, right? You can't say you have to do this. And there's some aspects of, like, community guidelines, right? And when you're in a job, it's like, you know, you've got your staff policy. So some of that stuff you do kind of like this one's such a hard example because I really chafe at most, like, legalistic kind of things. But I would still do this. If I was going to run a summer camp next year, this would still be in my summer staff policy, which is great timing on that drink that you just took. I always required that my summer staff did not drink or smoke weed or do drugs for the entirety of their summer staff time, all 10 weeks, whether they were on the clock or not. And it was absolutely not about me having a problem with people drinking. Like, I drink, I don't have a problem with weed. It's legal here in Washington, right? It has been for a long time, right? I don't have it's not a moral thing for me. It was always, and I had so many discussions with a certain staff member that you and I both worked with, will remain unnamed. So many discussions. Actually, two different staff members really had a problem with this. They felt like it was legalistic. And I was like, this is about kind of co-creating a space, because if each weekend there was a portion of the staff who were taking the opportunity to go hit a bar, it was leaving this other portion out. And it just felt like an unnecessary point of division. But
creating that boundary exacerbated the division in some cases.
But some staff
I think a community's got to have a blend of bounded and centered sets. And part of the thing about camp, going back to those students or those staff who didn't accept the invitation to be a part of what was being created or what was being offered, think that can be tied to expectations of a bounded set. And so some people would rather be part of something different because it's not what they expected. But without those boundaries, the people that are responsible for creating that community can work against each other or work against their own best interest, and not be able to cohesively create the thing that you're trying to create. So it's got to be a combination of both, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I when we were at it, I was kind of like, early on, I mean, if I'm honest, early on, it started as a legalism thing, but because that was the policy from the top, right? Indianola was the only time that I had the latitude to set that expectation. Before that, it was always an expectation of the people above me. And, Indianola was one of 4 camps, and we were the only one that had that policy of the 4 for their summer staff,
So talk to me, now that we're talking about communities, we're talking about bounded and centered sets and the character of a community in and out when you're talking about bounded sets, values or ideals when you're talking about centered sets, and whether or not you are gravitating towards those or moving away from those, or there's a dynamic interplay with a centered set. Anyway, so tell me about the kinds of communities that you've been a part of, and the themes throughout those communities. We've mentioned specifically an online community that you guys were a part of during COVID. The main thing that I'd like to talk about is this community that you and I are a part of. That you started, but that we all created together, called Seven Song Salon. But yeah, let's talk about those communities. What I want to focus on throughout the duration of this podcast, not this episode, but the whole podcast, one of the things that I'm concerned with is building community. One of the big unspoken themes, but one of the undercurrents of Theology Beer Camp last year was what's next. There's a lot of people asking, where do we go from here? There's a lot of people that are coalescing around these progressive communities, but they're still trying to figure out, what does it look like moving forward? That's something that I want to focus on in the podcast. So let's talk about the different communities that you've been a part of.
Yeah, Theology Beer Camp is such an interesting, I know it's not on our list of things we were going to talk about necessarily, but it certainly is a great example of what I've observed. And there's really 3 communities that I have been a part of building since I left camping. So for those who don't know, I left camp. Joey joined the team at Indianola October of 2018. I left in May of 2019. So we only had about 7 months together, and we never got to experience a summer together, which is particularly disappointing, though depending on the summer.
Oh, it was disappointing.
Yeah. You had a rough 2019. I had a real rough 2018 as well.
Yeah.
There were some summers there at Indianola. 15 and 16 were particularly nice. So anyway, all that to say, after I left Indianola, I was kind of trying to figure out what was next. Luckily, simultaneously, Deanna had just finished her MDiv and was ready to pursue a position as a pastor. In the PCUSA, it's not quite as easy as just getting your MDiv and getting hired. There's still about 3 years of hoops you got to jump through, so she was able to find a place where she could start jumping through those hoops. And she started there in September of 2019. And so 6 months later was March of 2020 when everything shut down. And this church that Deanna was working at was mostly 80-year-old people. I mean, we were one of the 3 young couples, right, in our late 30s with 2 kids. We were one of 3 young families in the church when COVID hit. And so we kind of helped that church go digital, because most of them didn't know how to check their email, right? Like, and all of a sudden we're doing Zoom church. You know, through the early 2010s, Deanna and I had been deconstructing. And then 2015, 2016, and all of that nonsense around that election, a lot of the people that we knew from evangelical churches also started deconstructing. And that entire, 2016 to 2020, lots of people realized that the evangelical church was full of shit. And at least the ones around here, the ones that we were participating in, right? You've got Trump, you've got COVID, you've got Black Lives Matter. Those three things really revealed the moral decline and the hypocrisy of the evangelical churches, at least in this area. But I also know that a lot of people feel that at the national level. But I'll just speak what we were seeing here. And since we had been in ministry in this area for so long, we were pretty well connected. And so we were not quiet about our deconstruction on social media. So people knew, well, there's Darin and Deanna have done this. They've been here. And so we kind of started to attract this group of people who were saying no to something. And that's an important point. I think that's one of the things I've realized about this particular season was there were a lot of people who were saying no to something. And that was something that they were initially drawn together around, right. Was their common denial of the evangelical church.
Right. What you reject, what you don't want to be.
What you reject. I heard it once referred to as negative identity. You're determining your identity by what you're not necessarily by what you are, right? It's what you're pushing away from. So we ended up in COVID starting an online community that we called Parenting Through Faith Shifts. Deanna and I co-led it. We came up with 8 or 10, I think, topics that were kind of like hot button deconstruction topics, right? So we hit inerrancy of scripture. We hit the theories of salvation. What I'm talking about.
There's atonement theories.
Thank you. Atonement theories. We talked about various atonement theories. And it was because it was Parenting Through Faith Shifts. It was a bunch of people who had elementary to middle school age kids. And they were trying to figure out, now that I've rejected the evangelical church, how do I establish some sort of a moral framework for my children? And so it was kind of like hey, let's talk about these things so that you have a better understanding of them so that you can better help your kids understand these things. Gender and sexuality. I think we did 2 because that was big for a lot of people. They were just finally being able to even acknowledge that there was more than one way that you could faithfully view those things. So that was Parenting Through Faith Shifts. And what I loved about that group is because we had this focus of parenting, our faith is shifting, we did draw together around that. What happened with that group, though, was that once we ran out of those topics, we kind of asked the group, what do you want to continue? And we had such rich conversations. Everybody's like, yeah, absolutely. We're like, okay, great. Well, we'll come up with maybe some more topics or some more things that we could discuss. But for whatever reason, people just kind of stopped showing up. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it was that they had, without really realizing it, that even though we were coming together around the parenting thing, we were actually more coming around the faith shifts thing. And that was a thing we were pushing away from, not a thing we were moving toward. We were pushing off of an old bounded set boundary, but we hadn't yet established a center around which we could build a centered set group. Mm-hmm. And so that group kind of just fizzled. We had maybe 4 or 5 more meetings and people came late. And, we had, at the height, I think we had 12 Zoom windows for that group. And each Zoom window was a family, not an individual.
Right.
It was usually a couple sitting in their bed because that was the only place they could not be where their kids were. And so, we had a decent number at some point, and then it just kind of fizzled because people had kind of had the catharsis of, we're all here pushing away from this thing, but they just never got to that next point of, What are we going to gather around? And so, that was part of it. Then the other group that's more recent for me, before we get to Seven Song Salon, I built a group of local guys last year. There were 7 or 8 of us, and we read Aaron Simmons' Camping with Kierkegaard.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was that we would once a month meet and discuss a chapter, and then 2 weeks later, but still once a month, go and do an adventure to kind of live out the ideas in the book, essentially.
Nice.
And lots of interest, really great, but even that just kind of fizzled. We didn't even finish the book. Like we got to like chapter 8 or 9, and then people just kind of stopped showing up, stopped being interested. And I see all those guys still, and all of them are like, man, we should get back together. I'm like, cool. You're on the same group text I am. Go for it. But they kind of all look at me like, hey, you should get us all together again. I was like, dude, I got you all together 7 times. Do some work. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the other thing that was present in Parenting Through Faith Shifts, but wasn't present in Camping with Kierkegaard's group, was it was not co-created. On Camping with Kierkegaard, that group, I said from the beginning, I don't want to be the leader of this group. I want us to build this together. But the reality when it all came together was I ended up doing the majority of the organizing, the majority of the, hey, are we getting together? And so it wasn't co-created. It wasn't co-owned. And so it fizzled.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these 2 elements that I love, like that we're having this conversation, because I don't think I've ever really crystallized this as well as you and I have been talking about having this conversation, and even now. What are these 2 components that have to be present to make a community really come together? In my experience, is a center that we're gathering around and a co-creation. If we're talking about deep community where each member is a whole participant. And I think that's what we've experienced at Seven Song Salon, which we affectionately, at least I mostly just call it Salon. I think most of us. So you want me to move into talking about that?
Yeah, let's talk about Seven Song Salon. So what we've been talking about here is, I don't want to say failure to launch because they launched, but failure to sustain communities. One of the things that I think progressive Christians or progressive people need to learn are the failure to sustain lessons. Why is it that we can't sustain a group based on affinities or similar interests? Why isn't that we can't sustain a group based on similar life journeys, like the parenting group that you were a part of?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I don't know if it's the special sauce, but definitely what you've said, a center to gather around and the co-creation or co-ownership, I think are critical.
Mm-hmm.
And so that takes us into a group that has been relatively successful in terms of our demographic, the frequency with which we meet, the intensity of the conversation, the topical affinity, like all of these things have been successful aspects of this group that we've co-created.
Yeah, and
I don't mean you and me, but all of us, all 7 guys.
Yeah, all 7 guys co-created, and we just hit 5 years. We've been at it, which is wild to me. So here's Seven Song Salon in a nutshell for those at home. Early in the pandemic, I'm a big podcast listener. I listen to a lot of them at 2 times speed and a lot of audiobooks as well. Early in the pandemic, there was a limited series of podcasts by a woman named Priya Parker. And the podcast was called, I believe, Together Apart. I'm sure you could still find it. I think it was associated with NPR, but I had actually read Priya Parker's book, which is phenomenal, especially if you want to really be good at hospitality. Not just like hosting good parties, but just being a host as a person. Fantastic book. It's called The Art of Gathering. It's by Priya, Priya Parker. So she did this podcast in COVID called Together Apart. And it was all around how do you stay connected in this time? And how can you be intentional when you're not able to gather physically to make your virtual gatherings more robust? And at the end of one of her episodes, she always had this weird, like, just like here's a quick idea. Here's just a thing you could do. And it was, so I always said it was like a throwaway line. It was not the meat of the episode at all. It was just this tail end idea. And she called it 7-Song Salon. She said, you gather a group of people and everyone prepares an autobiographical playlist of 7 songs that kind of tell your life story. And each time you meet, you listen to someone's playlist and they discuss why they picked each song, and you discuss it as a group. Mm-hmm. And it sounded phenomenal to me. And so I reached out. Here's the real sad part. I sent an invite to 20 or more guys. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I felt like it needed to be guys. And I invited over 20 guys to be a part of this thing. And 5 took me up on it initially. You and 4 others. So in our first, we call them seasons, which is each one of us taking a turn, right? Mm-hmm. In our first season, there were only 6 of us. And each of us prepared a 7-song autobiographical playlist. And then we sent it out to the group. We listened to it for a week. And then we came together once a week on Thursday nights to just talk through it. And at the end of the first season, I don't know, like we didn't want to be done. And we talked about shifting over to like talking about books or talking about podcasts. And I was really upset when we decided not to. I really wanted to get into like content. I didn't just want to be listening to music all the time and talking about music. I don't know if I've ever even told you this, but I was pretty upset when we as a group were like, no, let's keep building playlists. Let's just figure out how to do it differently. And we've gone through different iterations, but the majority of our seasons tend to be where each person takes a turn hosting, and the host throws out a theme. Could be very first theme was oceans, I believe. Mm-hmm. We've had Be a Man was one of mine, I think. Yeah. Bad Day Boosters. We've had 2 Bad Day Boosters playlists, both of which are jams. Those are both great playlists. But basically, everyone sends the host one song that they think fits that theme. The host puts it together, and then we listen to that playlist throughout the week. We come together at the end to discuss why we submitted that one song. We've done some other seasons where we've watched movies together, right? Yep. We had one where we watched a movie one week. The host got 2 weeks. We watched a movie one week, and the host gave us a theme one week that felt like it was tied to the movie, I think, is how we did it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's how we did it at first.
Yeah, and so we've gone through these various iterations, but the music playlist has been the most consistent. We had a few where it was like, you can do whatever you want. And 5 out of the 7 of us said, here's a theme for a playlist. Only a couple people didn't do playlists at all. But yeah, so we've kept around this music. It's always, when I talk about Salon to people, I say, it feels like what I heard and what I experienced when I was in youth ministry, which was the best way to connect with another guy is to have a ball or a frisbee. Right? And if you can just throw that ball back and forth, you're playing catch, you're playing frisbee, you're going to have some conversations. And I think that's what music has been for us. Mm-hmm. But then, so we've had this central thing. We've had the center around which to gather has been the music. But then also really early on, I said, I don't want to be leading this. And I've maintained a minor leadership role in that each season, I randomly draw names and send it to the group. That's it. Every now and then I float a little idea, but so do all of us. And that's the thing. It's like we have really, because we take turns hosting, and sometimes the theme is just goofy or it's more about the music, and sometimes it's more about like be a man. We had some really good conversation that week about what messages we had received about being a man and how we wanted to be a man. So I think it has been, we've had both of those things. We've had the center around which to gather, and we have had a co-creation element. I could leave. If I left the group would continue on, right? And we've had members leave. We've lost 2, we've gained 3. So we're at 7 right now. And we've been able to maintain this idea because we're co-creating it. I don't have to be at every single meeting. In fact, I do miss meetings. All of us miss meetings with life and whatnot. And the thing goes on because we all own it. And I love it. It's my favorite thing I do. It's my favorite social thing I do. I really like my kids and my wife. That caveat aside, Salon is the highlight of my month. You know, we meet mostly twice a month when all goes well right now. But even on weeks when like there's a couple of us that aren't going to be there and we decide we're not going to discuss the playlist because we don't want to do it without those couple of guys, the rest of us will often get together and just shoot the shit and check in. I love when we first started and we the first season of Salon, the first night I just started, I was like, we need some sort of like icebreaker question. And so we did. United Methodist introduced me to the idea of mutual invitation, where when you take your turn, at the end of your turn, you call on someone else to go. You invite them to share. And so we used mutual invitation. And the 2 questions were, what you drinking and how you doing? Though maybe not in that order. How you doing, what you drinking? Yeah. And so we go around the circle, the little Zoom screen. And you'd say, here's how I'm doing. And I'm drinking strawberry lemonade from Costco with added LaCroix because it makes it bubbly and slightly less sweet, right?
Voodoo Ranger?
Voodoo Ranger shows up
9.5.
Yeah. And I mean, and not everybody, some people are drinking beer. Some people we have several guys in the group who are sober and are doing great with that. And it's never been a thing. Like, it's just, you know, I don't know. Like that, I love that question has endured. 5 straight years is how we open every salon. It's wild to me. I don't know. I've been talking for a long time. You're a part of it. What do you think?
So Salon for me has been incredible. We mentioned we started during the pandemic, basically. So this was
June of 20.
Yeah. Not only was this a way to connect with other people when the whole world was shut down, basically, but it very quickly became a lifeline for a lot of different things. This was before I started therapy.
It's before a lot of us.
Before a lot of us started therapy. Yeah. So I mean, I can't fully articulate what the group has meant to me, but like last week was one of our off weeks, but I sent out a text. Does anyone want to hang out? These guys are the first, I think, to share things with. They're the first, I think, I want to hang out with, and I still haven't met all of them in person. So like that's a bucket list, is to get out and to actually, meet my friends in person.
Have you met any of them in person but me?
I think. No.
Because we have had some portion of the group together a few times, but you're the furthest away geographically.
Right.
And so you haven't been able to make any of those.
Yeah.
You and one other, the guy down in LA. I'm intentionally avoiding names just because I don't know that they necessarily want to be shared, right? But the guy that's down in LA, he hasn't made it up for anything.
Right.
So,
yeah, I'm really disappointed that I couldn't make the Dodgers thing work. Because I really wanted to go and support our friend who was doing the Dodgers baseball camp.
Yeah.
And I had an offer to sleep on the couch of our friend in LA.
Yeah.
I should have just gone and done that by myself. It just kind of fell through. But that's
my dreams of actually getting together in person. But the 7 of us have never been in the same room at once.
I think that needs to be the next thing, is we figure out a season, like once a year or something where we can all gather together.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be great. Yeah. And when we started, I was the hub. No one knew each other. Everyone only knew me. That was the first 6 guys. They were all just 5 guys that only I knew, and they didn't know each other. But then we lost one at the end of season 1. We added 2, and the 2 we added were not people that I added. And then when we lost one for, season 15, 16, we lost him, and we added another guy. He was added by one of the other guys too. So now, I'm not the hub necessarily, but still, most of us only have met one other person in the group in real life, other than the fact that 4 of us now live in Kitsap County and another visits pretty regularly. So those 5 of us got together, I think last summer we all got together.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I keep thinking, when I talk about Salon to people, I think about the times when one of the guys, and maybe we need to edit this out, I don't know, but when one of the guys has said, this group literally saved my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that. I don't think during the time of the group, have been low enough where, the group was the only thing that was keeping me together, but I know it's been true for some of the guys. I mean, we started during the pandemic. It was a shit time for most people. Yeah. And we've had guys get divorced during the 5 years. We've had some real weird shit happen to people during the 5 years. Mm-hmm. And our 7 guys, we keep showing up and saying, how you doing, what you drinking? The weirdest AA meeting ever. But there's something about the consistency. There's something about having that playlist that keeps bringing us back, where we talk about important things. We don't every week, but man, the weeks when we get into something, those things are sacred space.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that's a good place to end it. It's still mysterious. It's not something that we can quantify or systematize, but we've done it. We've got at least one example in our lives of a group that coalesced around something and that has beat the odds and stayed together. Mm-hmm. So it's possible.
Yeah.
Whatever the secret sauce is, we've got some clues, I think, in here that we've discussed, but bottom line is it's entirely possible to get people together and committed to each other, even strangers. Mm-hmm. And that's something that gives me hope. It's been difficult for me to think about what's next because evangelical Christianity took so much out of me, took so much away from me. But things like this, Salon, gives me hope.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for it every day. Think about you guys every day. And yeah.
COVID was a time of profound separation in a way that we hadn't really experienced individually or communally prior. And I think for those people who took that as an opportunity to find new ways to connect and new ways to be, it had the potential to be not entirely negative, right? That some good could come from it.
Right.
And I've been thinking a lot about where do we go next as a society, as a people, as a broader community. I don't know that we're going to be able to do that as a country, but maybe eventually in America in the year of our Lord 2025. I don't know what coming back together after this season of profound separation looks like, but I do think there's something to be learned from this smaller example of we were in profound separation and we found something that we could gather around. And we started asking, how you doing? What you drinking? Tell me about your song. Tell me about why this connects with you. And I got to think that eventually we've got to get to a place where we can look at each other, look at someone else from whom we have experienced a profound separation and say, tell me about your song.
Yeah, I was thinking that's the next step in this experiment, is including people with whom we are separated in figuring out how to reconcile. I still like that word, reconciliation. The idea of coming together and bridging gaps, mending wounds. I think that I mean, innately that takes an amount of humility that is profound, and I think that's the key, is humility. You know, a self-sacrifice that allows us to make contact with another person, you know, and really, really figure out how to see the humanity in another person. And this goes back to what we're talking about that sustains a group. This is not about what we're against. It's about what we're for, figuring out what we have in common.
When you said self-sacrifice, I bristled a little bit because I know that there are some, and this isn't how you meant it, and that's not, don't hear that. I know that there are some who have been asked to sacrifice and have been hurt by that experience. And so I might reframe that just a little bit back to the language of invitation, right? That you would provide hospitality and that you would invite someone in a way that builds both of you up. And,
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, in the same way that like hosting in your home, like there's a bit of self-sacrifice in terms of like, at least for us, we clean up a little. When you come into our home, you are not seeing it in its natural state, right?
Right.
But so we've given up a little bit to help it feel more comfortable for someone else to come into that space. But it's because we want them in that space with us and because the space will be made better by their presence. So it's a co-creation. It's an invitation. Like all these things we've been talking about, I think that's where we need to go next, is inviting others to co-create what comes next along with us and stop being defined by what we're not and start finding ways to be defined by what we are. That's where I'm at.
That's a good word. We'll end with that.
Thanks, man. This was great.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is only the second podcast I've ever been on. So, yeah.
Well, this is only the second episode that I've ever done.
There you go. Yeah.
I lost my train of thought a couple of times with Patterson, which I did not with you. So I appreciate that.
Well, we had an outline. That helped.
Well, I think we did fine.